thank you all for coming, both in person and virtually here, both in the United States and across the globe in Poland, and I think elsewhere as well. If you are joining with us online, you can pose questions to the Q&A in the webinar, and we will share those. And for those of you in person, there is a live mic that you can ask questions as well. For those of you that maybe don't know me, I'm Dr. Richard Reitsma, the Associate Professor of Spanish at Canisius University, Director of International Relations, and Faculty Associate Dean for Inclusion and Engagement. I am also the founder and director of the Borders and Migrations Initiative, and I've been lucky enough to have been Faculty Exchange Fellow at the University of Warsaw American Studies Center, where also I have met Joanna. I also want to make sure to thank the Permanent Chair of Polish Culture here in Buffalo and the Kosciuszko Foundation for their support of this endeavor. I also want to thank my student and alumni assistants, Christy Konsal and Corey Chervin, who's my tech support over here. He's since graduated and yet still comes to help me out, so I appreciate that. So it is my great honor and privilege to welcome Agnieszka Holland to our virtual campus for a conversation about her gripping film exploring the Polish-Belarusian border crisis. Agnieszka is an internationally acclaimed filmmaker known for her uncompromising portrayals of historical upheavals and crises. Her 1990 historical war drama, Europa, Europa, received a Golden Globe Award and an Academy Award nomination for Best Adapted Screenplay. Her Holocaust dramas, Angry Harvest and In Darkness, were nominated for the Academy Award for Best Foreign Language Film. Her 2017 movie, Spór, adapted from Olga Tokarczuk. Thank you. Echo fiction, Drive Your Plow Over the Bones of the Dead, earned her the Alfred Bauer Prize at the Berlin International Film Festival. She boldly engages with controversial and underrepresented topics. Her 2019 movie, Mr. Jones, constitutes a rare cinematic representation of the Holocaust, the Soviet regime's deliberate starvation of millions of Ukrainians in the 1930s. Her latest movie, Green Border, which we will be discussing today, depicts the horrifying struggles of migrants at the EU-Belarus border. It has already received numerous awards, including the Special Jury Prize at the Venice International Film Festival, and has sparked a lot of controversy in Poland. I'm joined today with fellow Polish scholars who will help facilitate this conversation. I'll let Joanna introduce herself, and as well as our other guests.
Agnieszka, it's a great honor to have you here with us. Eva, we're also so glad that you can join us here from Lublin to help facilitate this conversation. Eva Antoszek is assistant professor at the Department of British and American Studies at Maria Curie Skłodowska University in Lublin in Poland. She holds a diploma in American Studies from Smith College as well. Her research examines the question of border with a particular focus on US-Mexico border and the situation of the Latinx in the United States, as well as migration and their effects. And I'm also very happy to see right now Professor Zbigniew Mazur joining us as well, just in time to introduce him. Zbigniew Mazur teaches British and American history and cultural studies at the Department of British and American Studies, also at Maria Curie Skłodowska University in Lublin. His academic interests center on early American history, leisure studies, and film and television studies. My name is Joanna Mąkowska. I'm assistant professor at the University of Warsaw's American Studies Center, and I'm a visiting professor here at Canisius this semester as part of our faculty exchange program that Richard was also part of, and I'm teaching here a course on literature in times of crisis, focusing specifically on Polish and Ukrainian literature. Agnieszka, I would like to open with a very general question. Here at Canisius, we teach courses that discuss different representations of crisis in literature and beyond. And today we're going to talk about cinematic representation. And I would like to ask you, in your experience, what are the major ethical challenges related to the methods of representing the border crisis and the violence of pushbacks. Could you tell us a little bit about the ethics of representation in that regard?
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me in the first place, and I will be very glad to explain to you my way of seeing the problem, facing the problem, and representing the reality, which is the subject of our movie. As Richard, when presenting me, mentioned, I did several films about Holocaust, 3 movies actually, and I wrote some scripts about that period. So when I counted it, one day I realized that I spent about 7-8 years of my life in that reality, because when I are doing the film, it's not only shooting, which is relatively short period of the time, it is writing the script, making the research, preparing the film, shooting, post-production, and so on and so on. And during that period, of course, I'm not living in the ghetto or concentration camp, but I interiorize that reality, psychologically speaking, in order to feel that I share with the people not only some facts, but also very personal experience. At least it's my method. After 3 movies of that kind, and I made them for some kind of the, urge. I felt that the story is not over. I felt that the experience of the Holocaust and Nazism and fascism and Second World War, which shaped the world and especially the Europe afterward, and created the new institutions and new way, new values also to defend. That experience left Europe with some kind of the vaccine, which unfortunately, on the beginning of our century, started to evaporate, maybe even before. And I felt that the story didn't end, that it was suspended or put to sleep. But it can wake up any moment in different form, of course, and it's also possible the changing of the roles, that I don't know, victims will become the perpetrators, and that gene of virus of hate can and the need to find the enemy and to find the scapegoat is something which is very, very easy for the political fabric and for the human nature. When the migration crisis started in 2015, due to Syrian domestic war, and millions of people have been suddenly displaced and fleeing the country and fleeing the bombs and fleeing the violence and the threat of the dead. The first reaction of the Europe was very confused. It was a lot of confusion, but very quickly it was some important gestures of the solidarity, especially in Greece, for example, or in Italy. But very quickly some members of the political class started to realize that it can be some kind of the political goal, and that using that confusion and fear, it will be quite easy to manipulate with the political reality and win some kind of the right, far right agenda, and spread the feelings and pulsions which been present but put to sleep exactly by that vaccine of the Holocaust. Of course, I'm telling now the things which are a little simplistic, but just to, to resume the situation, the general picture as I see it. In the same time, it was the moment when the democracy was in crisis and the capitalism started to be in crisis. And it was several new challenges for the humanity, which came very quickly, one after other. The internet revolution, the social media, the gender revolution, the climate catastrophe, globalization, and so on and so on. So suddenly it was so many of the things which was impossible or very difficult to resolve and even to face, that the field for the populists became very fertile. And populists are the people who are telling that they have easy solution to complex issues and challenges and problems and crises. Any of those crises is not responsive to simple solution. But in the same time, we are not living in the world when we have the political class and the general desire to look for complex solutions and collaboration and global collaboration, because most of those problems are global. So very quickly, the migrants became the tools in the political game, and very quickly also the outside Europe regimes and dictators like Vladimir Putin in the first place figure out that that is the weak spot in the tissue of the European Union, and that it will be very easy to manipulate with the flow of the migrants and create using the real need of those people, real situation and real people, to manipulate manipulate in the way that the destabilization of the European Union will be the most quick, global, and priceless. They don't need to spend a lot of money. They even are making money on that story, and the efficiency is enormous. And in my opinion, Vladimir Putin, he is not dreaming to have territories or earth, and even the wealth of Europe. He wants to have it sold somehow. That I will tell it in a bit idealistic way. It means to prove that the values of the West is just the pretension, is just the facet how you say paravan?
Kind of a
Screens,
of that
screens,
screen, yeah.
smokes, yeah, smokes and screens. But in reality, we are as cruel, as selfish, as cynical as he is. And if I believe personally that the value like human rights and liberté, égalité, fraternité, and so on are the biggest treasure of our civilization. But it's very easy to show that when we are risking our comfort, we are able quite easily to resign on those values. That it was just to speak about my state of mind when that crisis came to my country home, to Poland, and very quickly on the Polish-Belarusian border, with the quite big amount of people coming mostly from the Middle East and after from the North Africa. The things I'm telling started to happen in the Polish government then, which was quite nationalistic, conservative government with the tendency to the autocracy. they've seen the political gold in that situation, and they started to use it exactly to create the feeling of the danger. Very quickly, from a few months after the crisis started on the Polish-Belarusian border, it means the people from Syria, Iraq, Afghanistan, and so started to pass through that border. The war in Ukraine started. So here is the mix of the real danger and the real hybrid operation and the real need of those people to reach Europe. Most of them have been trying to do it for the quite long time. Many of them have been in the different camps. Many of them have been separated from their families, which emigrated in 2015 and 16. But the reunion of the families have been quite difficult, even in Germany, which was the most welcoming on the beginning. So many of them didn't try to pass through they did try to pass through the Balkan corridor or Mediterranean, but that it was too difficult, too violent, too risky, and that Polish border seemed to be some kind of the paradise. And I wanted to show exactly that situation when the people are arriving, believing that they finally won that ticket on the lottery, that they can really to change their life and the lives of their families for the best. And they are meeting the cruelty and the absurd Kafkian horror of the cold and forest and hate. Because Mr. Kaczynski decided to lock that area and to forbid the access to that area after a few weeks, not only to the humanitarian organizations or medical organizations, but also to the medias, I understood quite quickly that they try not to do the things in the way which I knew already, because I had a lot of witnesses and conversations and photographs from that situation. That he will try to hide the reality of that cruelty, instead using the quiet, unprecedented propaganda, dehumanizing those people, presenting them as a pedophiles, zoophiles, terrorists, rapists, and so on. And he actually said it openly in some moment, which for me was reassure me that I have to make the film. He said that the Americans lost the war in Vietnam because they allowed the media to go there. And in some way, he was right. The public opinion in US changed after seeing the images of the children burned by napalm and so on. But it was for me, it touched me. I say to myself, that man, who I don't respect and don't like, but he has, in that time, enormous power, believes in the power and the strength of the images, and that is exactly my field. It's my profession and my vocation. So I will prove that the images have the strength, and because of those images and the reconstruction of the situation, I knew about it, but no one was able to see with their own eyes. I will show the reality as it is, and I will give back to the people there their faces and their voices, because they became voiceless and faceless somehow. And it concerned not only the refugees, but them in the first place, but also the activists, the people who suddenly was able and forced by their morality, by their humanity, by their gene of empathy to go there and to help, even if it was quite risky and very difficult physically also. And very soon it started to be criminalized by the government. And also to the border guards, who from the decent, good military forces, the most respected probably in Poland, changed to some kind of the I use that metaphor, which actually I've been attacked after in Poland because of that. The guardians of the Berlin Wall, which actually symbolically it came back to my mind because a few days ago it was the verdict of the trial against the border guard from Berlin Wall, who shot the Polish man who tried to escape, to flee. So somehow, I thought to myself, I made that films about Holocaust and Holodomor, and I'm pretty sure that we are on the very dangerous path to mentally accept that the violence and hate is a solution to the problems, which normally could be dissolved in different way, or maybe not dissolved so easily, but at least our human duty is to try to deal with them as a humans.
Thank you, Agnieszka, so much for also explaining the complexity of global context, of political and historical context, and also talking about the power of the image, the power of showing this problem from different perspectives. One of the perspectives which is included in this movie is that of the board guard, yes, that seems to undergo a certain kind of transition. I think Richard has a question about it. And then Eva, I know that you also have a question that has to do with this global context and global question, global context of border crisis, which is, of course, not unique, yes, to one location. So Richard?
Yeah, no, I'm thinking about this a little more in relationship to what you just said about Putin's agenda of sort of undermining the moral sense of superiority that the West may have about how it treats people. I was very intrigued by the representation of at least one of the border guards who was somewhat sympathetic and did have a bit of an evolution. I'm assuming that part of this was because of his impending fatherhood that gave him some sense of humanity for others. And yet, I mean, he still does things that are really cruel and vicious. And I just sort of wondered what your process was of including him in the film and how that was to work in a sympathetic portrayal within this otherwise very cruel context.
Well, I think that he's not cruel or he's not bad by himself. It means if he didn't face that kind of the situation, and if the system didn't ask him to do it, he will be never making something which is violent or immoral. He likes to be good. He prefers to be good, which also I wanted to show in the very last scene when he comes to Ukrainian border. Suddenly he can be openly good and it's accepted by everybody. I think personally that except of the psychopaths, most of people are able to be good or to be bad depending on the circumstances and depending on the people are conformists by nature and by need. And if the authorities, I don't know, political authorities, military authorities, religious authorities, tell them that to kill somebody is good, they will be going and killing them. Some of them have the sadistic pulsion afterwards, and others have the post-traumatic stress, and others are drinking like crazy, and they've been even the cases of the suicides. But very few of them, actually no one openly tells something against. I was contacted by a few border guards in secret. Anonymously, they gave me several information, sometimes very insightful informations, and they really hated it. They didn't, it means what they've been doing. And they hope that it will change, but they believe that the change will come from the outside, for example, with the change of the political power, which happened actually. And first month after the change of the government, the several commanders of the bodyguards units started to behave much more humanly and with more of sympathy toward the refugees. But very quickly, the new government took over the same agenda and even reinforced it somehow, because they passed the law that the military forces in Poland can shoot anyone on the border without apparent reason, and that the militaries will be not punished for that. It was called by some great Polish lawyers the license to kill. It was a shock to I didn't expect that the government will change the policy on that border, because apparently it's much easier to use the fear and to speak about the security than to try to make to close, for example, the economical exchange with Belarus, or to make the very extended pedagogical work in the countries where the people are coming from. Anyway, I didn't believe that the government, new government, will change the policy, but I believe that they will be not so radical and so extreme in accepting and pushing to the cruelty, and that they will stop pushbacks, at least for the weakest, for women, children, elders, and so nothing like that happened. And they started to lie in pretty same way like the governments before. So it's a big disappointment. And of course, after some moment when the border guards believe that they can do it in the way which most of them probably would like to do, at least half of them would like to do, they went on the same path. And I was talking to the activist yesterday, who came straight from the border, and the situation is not any better. It means because the wall was built and reinforced, so you have less children and women now. It's mostly young men, but I believe personally that even young men have the rights to live.
Eva, would you follow on with that?
Yeah, thank you. Thanks, Sarah. First of all, thank you for having me here. I had this question related to the question of the issue of globalization, because in our project that is related to the representation of migration in the media, with Zbyszek, we've analyzed several films and representations of migration through the US-Mexico border, which is usually described as this paradigmatic case of global border development. So recently we talked a little bit about the Three Burials of Melquiades Estrada, so an early film where the border was still not with concertina wire, right? And then we compared that with Inarritu's project, Carne y Arena, so Flesh and Sand. But there are also other examples, like, for example, Casa en Tierra Ajena, Home in a Foreign Land, which talks about migration from the Northern Triangle in general, from Central America. And we see this analogy that Polish-Belarusian border is starting to play an analogical role, an analogical function to the US-Mexico border, because we have become the Eastern border of European Union that is becoming more and more militarized. So there are numerous analogies in those representations, and we would want to ask you, because there are those universal tropes that sort of testify to this global character of migration. Were you influenced in your work, in the work on Green Border, by any other cinematic representations of migration? So somewhat related to the process, and I think Asia also has a question about the process of production of the film.
I was watching mostly the documentaries actually about the subject. I've seen Inarritu film, but I didn't the other you are mentioned. I've seen some documentaries, and I watched a lot of documentaries about the Syrian crisis and the Mediterranean crisis. And the feature films, I watched some, but actually I don't have in mind now. Yeah, I wasn't certainly inspired by that too much, So I was quite fresh when starting that knowing that that the situation somehow is similar also on Mexican border, even if the real change for the country, for US, because of the massive migration from Latin America is uncomparable with the numbers of people who can pass the Belarusian border. It's probably 10,000 altogether. We are not speaking maybe a little more, but in that amount, we cannot speak about something which will change the fabric of the society. It means it's not like social or political danger of that kind. But it is manipulated by Putin. So Putin is not manipulating, I imagine, anyway, not directly. The Latin America is mostly economical problems which are pushing them. And the economical problems and the problems and political problems in those countries are pushing all the people to take on that road, and it will not stop even if we deny them the asylum, which Donald Tusk, our prime minister, made that decision today or yesterday. And even if the walls will be higher, and even if the number of death in Mediterranean will be higher, is very high already. So in some point we will have to accept it or become more radical. And now it's pretty clear that Europe, at least, and probably US also, especially, it depends on the result of the election, will go to that radical side. We see how it can look like on the Saudian border, when the migrants, refugees, the people from Ethiopia are trying to pass, and Saudi border guards are killing them practically by thousands. It means you have the machine guns on the border, and you have the tortures also, and the humiliation. You have all the arsenal of the cruelty and killing on that border. And unfortunately, also the Greek border guards and Frontex border guards started not only to push back the boats with the people, but also to help them to sink. So it's where we are today. It's I had that vision since 2015. I've seen where it's going, and I thought that I have to speak about it, even if I don't believe that being Cassandra will change anything practically.
Thank you so much. I've just got one follow-up, and then I would like also to ask Zbyszek if you could join in our discussion. I wanted to ask you about your research process. Could you tell us a little bit more about how your research process looks like? To what extent did you rely on witness testimonies, interviews? In other words, to what extent is Green Border working through documentaries then?
Yeah, the research was like for the documentary film, and I had a lot of sources. We had a lot of sources. On the beginning, the media have been very interested, and it was a lot of very interesting and insightful papers about it. Also, following the refugees from the countries of, this political situation of the Middle East, and it's deteriorating more and more, and at least partly, we are very responsible for that. We, the West. So the states like Iraq, Afghanistan, Syria, Libya, Lebanon became fallen states, and the states are not working. And when the states are not working, the people are not safe. They cannot function normally, and they flee. And that, unfortunately, even dictatorship, if the state is working, the people are not living massively, at least. You have then the dissidents, the people who are the opposite to the regime, but not like, the tailor or the agriculture guy or, taxi driver. They are not living. So we created that situation with the stupid and selfish politics, when those countries will be producing more and more of migrants and refugees. And I'm not speaking even about Africa, where it's a total disaster in some countries, and in the same time you have the huge population there. And we are also adding to the climate catastrophe in the very extensive way. And it, of course, we even didn't start yet that big flow of climate migration. So why I'm telling about the research. So we've been researching, also in the countries. Of course, I knew that I will not include everything in the film. And we decided that because it will be the first film about that, and maybe the last, we don't know if somebody else will have the courage or possibility to make the movie. I wanted to be as truthful and as, epical, as complex as possible. And we decided to take 3 points of view. It was difficult to include more and to have the, consistency of the storytelling. And it was refugees, it means migrants, border guards, and the activists, with one who is local, who moved there. The paradox, I met several people have been based on the people we know, me and my screenwriters, and met, and some of them, for example, the character of Julia was inspired by a friend of mine, Elżbieta Podleśna, who was very activist and also the therapist, and she moved there for a while to find the peace after having some kind of the post-traumatic stress from the very active political opposition, and suddenly it happened that 3 people, Syrians, I believe, have been sinking in the swamp next to the house she rented. So suddenly she was, it was that situation which triggered the character of Julia. And we took several things from Elżbieta's story, but it was more of real people which we included. And with the refugees, after I casted, we wrote it, but after I casted the actors, who are professional actors, but they happen to be Syrian refugees as well, some of them. And they told me their stories, and they gave us also, we've been working on the dialogues and on the situation. I wanted them to bring as much of input of their experience as possible, and that it was with others. So we've been like taking the inspiration and facts from all possible sources. And also the photographers, it wasn't many films, but it was some clips, but it was a lot of photographs from that situations. Agnieszka Sadowska from the Gazeta Wyborcza in Białystok, and several other great photographers. They gave me the access to many photos they took. And also I spoke to several refugees, and I read a lot or watched a lot of videos recorded of their stories when they told their stories. And we met with some local people also, and the people who are not from the area but are living there for years. A lot of people moved there because they was searching for the peace and nature. It's beautiful. And you have also the people who are working in the Białowieża forest in the scientific institute, because the forest is unique in Europe. And so on and so on. Suddenly their life was totally shaken, and it didn't end it yet. When I'm talking to some of the people who from the beginning, local people, are involved in the help and in the activism, and several of them found the dead bodies and now they are really so tired and so desperate. And I'm talking with them on Zoom, and they start crying. They cannot stand it anymore. So I've seen that it's very dramatic reality, but in the same time, I wanted to keep some kind of the distance, to find the way to tell the story. But it was very much, collaborative effort. I had two co-screenwriter, and one is my niece, by the way, and she was heavily pregnant when we've been writing with her second child. So she was very sensitive to that story of, a border guard who is awaiting child. But her husband, a doctor, anesthesiologist, he created the group of the medics on the border, and he spent like month and a half there. And they've been very well organized, and they help a lot of people. They saved several lives, and they also told me a lot of medical story, because the medicine in the forest is something totally unknown before. You have to use the ways to treat people, and at the same time, most of them, they don't want to be discovered by the border guards. Some of them prefer to die or to risk the death than to be pushed back to Belarus again. So it was it was all very complicated and dramatic, and we wanted to make it as truthful and as close to the reality as possible. And the two border guards told us incredible stories, which we included also to the script. And after, it was much more the question of composition and elimination. But when I was doing the historical films, it was pretty much the same work, except that I was not talking mostly to the people but also sometimes, especially with the early Holocaust films, I was talking to the survivors, to the witnesses. So that it was the procedure which was natural. But with that film, because I knew that it will be very controversial politically and they will be attacked, I wanted to be sure that everything I show in the film, that I know that it's true, that we have some proofs for that.
Thank you so much for giving an insight into that. Zbyszek, would you like to question?
Thank you very much for having this opportunity to ask a question. You talked a lot today about the strong motivation that you had, an urge to make this film. And I wonder, and you talked about the power of the image. At the same time, you spoke about reservation, about the possibility of change that the film may cause. Your work has been often put in the tradition of the so-called Polish cinema of moral anxiety. is irrespective of whether you agree with that or not, is your aim to, or was your aim with this particular production to cause moral anxiety, or was it to go beyond that and perhaps change reality in some way? And I wonder, after a year, how do you think about the effects? How did you succeed?
Well, yes and no. It means I didn't believe that I will change the reality with that film, with one film, with any film probably, and that I will change the world. When the film was, we decided to open the film a few weeks before the general elections in Poland. It was because I had to show the film in Venice Film Festival, because I knew that the film like that needs the protection of the big festival somehow, and it was greatly received there. It was a huge success, but immediately it triggered the wave of the attacks coming and the hate campaign coming from the highest authorities of my country. The Minister of Justice called me the traitor, and the Goebbels and Hitler propaganda, Nazi propaganda, and another guy, Prime Minister, I don't remember which one, compare me to Stalin and Putin. And one more educated compare me to Leni Riefenstahl. And the president of the country thought that any people who will be going to the theater to watch the film are the pigs. So confirm your speaking language, yes. And many of people of the opposition then from the civic platform, they've been afraid. They tried that hate campaign, which actually after triggered a lot of hate on the internet, and we had the threats of death and so. It was made by that authorities because they believe that they can, before the election, to make some electoral gain from that. But they exaggerated, they overdid it. And then they made also the great, publicity for the film, and suddenly we had like 800,000 of viewers for that film, which is not easy film, as you know, in very short amount of time. And but the opposition was afraid of that, and some people I know from the political class, they told me, stop it, don't show it, don't open it. It will help peace to win the election. So it was that situation. I was thinking that it's impossible to have only hateful narration in the public space, and that it's my duty to show that film to the audience, that the people can see and make their own mind. And the reactions have been extremely emotional. It was the strongest reaction in Poland, but also after out of Poland, because we've been opening the film and showing it also at different festivals over the world, practically in entire Europe. So reactions have been very strong and very emotional. And I think that somehow it helped to win the elections for Democrats. Not because it was like around 1 million of people who've been familiar with the film, and it creates some feeling that are things more important than we are. That it was some kind of remind of that exaltation when Poles have been helping Ukrainian refugees, and we liked ourselves then. We felt that it's something that we are able to do something which is beyond our interests. So I think that kind of the exaltation was good for especially young people and women to vote the party which promised the change. But it wasn't. It means it wasn't my plan. I had the very simple plan, to show the humanity of those people, to give them the chance to be something more and different than the figures of Lukashenko's or Kaczynski's propaganda, that they are the human being who have their dreams, their desire, their destiny, their choices. And I, as a filmmaker, as an artist, I have the duty to give the space for them, that it will come to life. So that is my ambition, and of course, I wanted to make to make the impact on the people, on the viewers, and I did. But it didn't change the policy. The policy is going in the way which I described before. I remember on many Q&A with the audience, they've been asking me if I think that my film can change the world, and I was always saying, no, I don't think so. And one young woman in France, she stood up and she said, maybe your film will not change the world, but it did change my world. And that is the most beautiful gift you can have from the audience, because it's what counts, you know, the drop, that little thing which, you know, moves a bit in somebody's mind and heart, and can make him a different person for a while.
Thank you so much. Before we move on to the next round of questions, if we have time, we would like to open it up to the audience and include you in this discussion, both those of you who are here with us, but also those of you who attend virtually. So you're very welcome to add your questions to our chat, and we will read them out to Agnieszka. If you're here, you're very welcome to approach, yes, the mic over here and ask your question. I think it's a great opportunity. Ask Agnieszka about green border. Great. Jade,
Oh,
I think you need to turn it on. Sorry about that.
I just want to say thank you so much for like being here and like opening the space for us to have like such an important conversation. My question was it kind of was touched on some that during the film, like they both use dialogue and silence as well. How did you decide when to let the visuals or silence convey more than words, especially in scenes of suffering and isolation?
We've been talking about that with my closest collaborators. I had two young women co-directors, because we had very short shooting time, and we decided to split the shooting on two parallel units. It wasn't every day, but it was some days. So we've been very closely working together. And with my cinematographer, who've been from the beginning very much involved we decided to go with black and white for several reasons, but for me the most important was to give to the film, on one hand, that rawness of the documentary, and on another hand, the feeling of the timeless metaphorical dimension, because everybody who've been there immediately started to have some kind of the reminiscence of the Second World War. So a lot of situations and imaginary actually was felt and looked like Second World War. So I wanted to make it, and I wanted also to make it a bit like the horror film, you know, like the fairy tale of Brother Grimm's. So it was a lot of things we've been playing with, but the most important, it was to be true, to be emotional, and to be interesting. It means we wanted that storytelling to be captivating. We wanted to be somehow attractive in order to keep people in front of the screen for that 2.5 hours. And I think that inner energy we had, that kind of urgency and anger, made the energy of the film and filmmaking also, and you can feel it in the film. And I like very much that thing, which happens sometimes between the energy of the film and the reason why, filmmaker myself is doing that film, in which point of my life I am when doing it. I don't know if I did answer your question.
Yes, Jade. Jada says yes.
We have a question from an online audience member. That is, what is the source of your moral strength?
Well, I'm not so strong as you can imagine. And I think it probably, I don't know, but certainly I have some kind of it means I know that I can fail in the situations, on some situations, I don't know, of fear or pain or torture, I don't know, or blackmail, that I don't feel that I am just the superhero, not at all. But I think that you have to be true to very basic things, as as the humanity in the first place, as duty to see every single human being as unique and rightful.
Thank you so much. Are there any other questions, like here from the audience, or perhaps some more questions in the chat? If not, we can probably, yes, ask, do we still have time for at least one more question?
Maybe one or two, because it's
One
late
or
in
two,
Poland.
yes, because we're running late, yeah, we're running late.
Well, you mentioned earlier about being Cassandra, right? The prophet who tells the truth, but nobody believes. Yeah. And I guess I wondered two things in making this film, which is representative of very cruel realities. How did you and the crew engage in self-care or not get depressed over what you were telling? And the other question is, given the realities, and as you said, the little change that has happened, how do we maintain hope to keep moving forward?
We had the psychologists on the set, but mostly for the children actors, for the children, especially the two children who are playing in the film. They are Syrian children who passed the Turkish Syrian-Turkish border as very young kids, and they've been pushed back 7 times. So even if they've been quite little, I think that they had that memory. So I was really worried not to re-traumatize them. But actually, it was very good. It happened very, it was. I think they've been really happy and felt, to be the real part of that. And we didn't have the time really, to worry about ourselves, and it will be somehow selfish, because the people we've been talking with and we've been presenting, they've been in much more difficult situation. We can always go home after the shooting day and have some drink and the warm bath and talk about next day or about different things. So of course, it stays in you. It stays in you as it changes you for sure. The making films about such a reality. The question was how much to show, how graphically to show the violence, and we decided to go for that. But in the same time, you have much more movies which shows much more cruel things, much more of blood, and violence. Here the violence is because it's so absurd and so psychological, because that people are going through the next circles of the hell, they are descending and they don't understand why the others are doing it to them. Now I remember, the question you asked me about another films. It was not about the border so much, but it was about refugees. It's one film which I found it's fantastic, which was actually animated documentary, Danish, I think, animated documentary called Flee, which shows in very, very, complex and true way the story of the Afghan refugees, and it's very helpful, I think, to understand also the situation. It showed the story from from 90s, but it or maybe beginning of 21st century. Anyway, the years ago, before before the Syrian Afghan, because before the Afghan war. But I think it's very complex and very, very beautiful film. And recently I've seen very modest and small film, French film, Story of Suleiman, it's called. It's recent film. It was in Cannes. I don't know if you've seen it. Which showed the situation of the young migrant from Africa, from Black Africa, who tries to find the way to be accepted in France as a asylum seeker. And it's every day. It's like few days of his life and it's very true. It's very beautiful, and the guy is fantastic. So, and it also tells a lot what is the life from the point of view of the migrants. I think it's I can really to advise to watch that film.
Thank you for mentioning Flea, because we also interviewed the producers behind Flea as part of our initiative here, and I love that film so much. So thank you for mentioning that. We do have another online question.
We have another, yes, question. It's from Marcus, who is very grateful for this conversation and would like to hear more about the reception. You, of course, talked extensively about the reception among Polish politicians, but could you tell us a bit more about global reception and also the educational dimension of this movie? How it, maybe you could tell us something about how it was received also among students, yes, people who are interested in not only like in Poland, but also more broadly globally.
Well, the film opened in most of European countries, and it's still opening in some, recently in Scandinavia. And critical response and the response from the audience which went to see the film is great. Also, American critics have been fantastic. I don't remember when I had such a good critics. But except of Poland, even if the film won several audience prizes on many festivals, it didn't make the big box office in any country except of Poland. It's very difficult to promote, and I don't have President Duda in every country to promote my film, so it is more difficult to sell it. But I think it has real potential because the people are really moved by the film and they want to talk about it, and it's great subject to the discussion among the students or school students, high school students, for example. I think that the film is can be seen by young people in the way which I find quite important.
Thank you so much. We are discussing it here also in our classes. So I'm also very excited to learn from our students how they receive it and what kind of reflections they have to share. Thank you, Richard. Would you like to wrap it up? Because I think unfortunately, we're running out of time.
We are, and it's past 9:30 for for our guests here in Poland. There are more questions online, but at the moment, I think we kind of have to wrap things up. I want to thank our fellow panelists for joining us and providing some context for this film and the audience, both online and in person. It's been a great pleasure for me to be able to have a conversation with you. I love this film. It's, for me, a devastating film, but so worth watching and discussing and drawing parallels to the situation that we live in right now in this world. And so thank you. And yeah.
Thank you, everyone. Yes, we're very honored that you could have joined us here today, and thank you to the audience. Thank you to everyone that joined us virtually. And Agnieszka, let's give Agnieszka a big round of applause.
Thank you, guys. Thank you very much. It was a pleasure talking to you, even online.
And I would just add that at some point in the near future, we will have the recording of this available on our YouTube channel under Canisius Borders, and there you'll find this recording as well as the recording about the movie Flea that was mentioned, and other things as well. So thank you all for coming virtually and in person, and to my guests, and especially for Agnieszka for joining us. I really much appreciate it. Thank you.